Welcome to Finding My Wings. Today I'm going to talk about why my 200 horsepower at the crank and like 150 foot-pounds of torque car is an awesome choice for car enthusiasts, and you shouldn't be scared of these low power numbers. So let's get right into it. This is going to be a bit of a vlog style, just driving around today. Beautiful weather outside, and I can't miss it. So I'm going to take my lunch and talk a little bit about why I'm a big supporter of low power cars and some of the really cool things about low power cars. So I just wanted to talk a little bit while the car is warming up here about whether the FR-S BRZ platform is actually a low power car. And so now you have to take this into account, that this is a 2-liter 4-cylinder naturally aspirated car. And so to have 200 horsepower at the crank with this car, just with basic bolt-ons, you can get it 200 at the wheels. So 200 at the wheels with basic bolt-ons on a 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder car is not bad. If we look at the cars that are most valuable in the car community right now, a lot of them are going back to the 90s, and there's really two differentiations. You have cars that are in that 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged around 200 horsepower range, and then you have cars like 3.2 liter, 2.5 liter, 2.6 liter inline sixes that are 300 horsepower with a turbo from the factory. And if you were at a 4-cylinder naturally aspirated, you'd be under 200 horsepower basically every single time. Now, modern technology has come a long way. And so we get into a range where even if a car, so I always like to use the Shelby GT350 as an awesome example. I think it's probably like the best naturally aspirated sports car, not considering money, that you can buy. And that car is a 5.2 liter, it's around 520 horsepower. It's almost exactly kind of where you'd expect it to be for a naturally aspirated car that's efficient and has good power per liter. Now, this car is in range. Of course, it's a lot different. The Shelby has a almost perfect torque curve. This car does not from the factory, and that's where you always have to assume and kind of plan that an FR-S or a BRZ is going to need some mods to make it perfect. And they're really built and sold with that intention, that you're going to need some mods. So to me, I consider this relatively high horsepower compared to the cars that I grew up with, at least. And a lot of the cars that I used to really yearn after, which were 2-liter turbo and maybe 200 horsepower. There's of course a lot of Honda products that just broke the mold all across the board, and there's stuff like the Renault Alpine A110 that is very unique, and it comes with a cost. But otherwise, I consider this car, for what you get, it has good power. I never really wanted a high horsepower car. I'm building a higher horsepower project car. That's not a big focus for me. This is not going to be a drag car. This is hopefully going to be able to go to some autocross and just track days, and that's really about it. Outside of just being my daily driver, my grocery getter, my everything car. I just want to enjoy this car. I want to take it with me when I go somewhere. I want to not have to get it and worry every time if something is going to be leaking, or if rubber is going to be giving out, or if my tune is going to be crappy. And so the way it is right now, which is just basically a intake kit, and it's just basically the tube, so it's a HKS Premium Suction Kit. And then just a different muffler. So I'm maybe 5 to 10 horsepower more than factory on this car on good days with good fuel. And so I'm right at that stock range on this car. And so next, I really just want to talk about some differences in country and usage of the car. So I live in Canada. I don't live on the east or the west coast. I live kind of in the middle of Ontario here. And so we have a lot of just flat, straight, long roads. And so I've been talking to a lot of people recently about this topic, of whether you should buy an auto or a manual or a high power car or a low power car. And at the end of the day, for a real car person that just wants to feel their car a lot, in Canadian driving conditions, a high power automatic car like an automatic Mustang 5.0 is actually probably one of your best bets. You have enough power to just kind of go fast in a straight line if you're into that. And to be an automatic, you'll just have a calm, easy living experience with our types of roads and driving conditions in Canada, especially in the winter, and going between basically big cities with complex roads and just giant, long, straight, flat roads. A car like an FR-S BRZ or a premium like a Renault Alpine A110 doesn't make quite as much sense in Canada. You're not going to find 2Ks. You're not going to really find too many exciting roads unless you live in BC or somewhere out on the East Coast that actually has mountains and good road infrastructure. In other countries, of course, that's not the case. My friends in Japan, my friends in England, all have a lot different driving experience. So when you get into high power, you get into a case of how do you use that power. In Canada, I do acknowledge that if you want to make power, this probably isn't the car for it unless you get a really good deal and you want to turbocharge or supercharge it. I would probably just look at something more like a 370Z, WRX, a Mustang GT, something that just stock has well-tuned, good, usable, higher horsepower numbers, and it's just going to be a comfy cruiser on these long, straight, flat roads. Of course, if you live in Japan or Europe or anywhere with big twisty roads, France, Switzerland, etc., a car like this starts to make a lot of sense because you can only get so much power down to the road. So if you have a 600 horsepower BMW that weighs 4,500 pounds, then every corner you're going to be fighting your weight and you're going to be fighting your power. If you go too hard, you're going to spin your tires, you're going to put yourself at risk, you're going to put other people on the road at risk. It's just not necessary, and it doesn't make you really go faster. Growing up, between, seeing a lot of people at the track, doing a lot of research, always reading magazines, starting to network and actually meet people when I bought like my Merkur XR4 Ti track car and such, there became a kind of a golden number. If you're around 3,000 pounds to 2,500 pounds or even down to that 2,000 pound mark if you're really lucky, 350 horsepower is kind of your limit. If you go above 350 horsepower, it's tricky to get that power down without serious chassis mods and a lot of driver experience to know what to do with all that power. And that kind of pushes me into handling. And so there's actually debates around this car and how it handles, and I was actually pretty lost in that debate myself before buying one, or before test driving a bunch, I should say. It's a car that translates really odd virtually, whether you're doing like iRacing sim level stuff, or Assetto Corsa, or Project Cars, Gran Turismo, Forza Motorsports, whatever you have access to or prefer. This car has a weird driving dynamic to it. It is heavier in the front than the back. So the golden ratio, the 50-50, 50% of your weight in the front, 50% of your weight in the back, is not present on this car, and that's actually got the car a lot of flack from what I've seen. And there's a reason for that. This is a Subaru. So you have a low center of gravity, your car doesn't roll as much. And so they're trying to put a little bit more pressure on the front wheels to just act as a solid base plate that sits on the road, and then you can control the whole car through the front end, and the back end's going to do whatever it wants. So as opposed to a WRX or an STI, the back end comes out in this car pretty easily, and it will stay out. You can drift around a corner, no problem. They even put, these Primacy HP Prius tires on it to elevate that factor. I find it an amazing balance. It's hard, because when you're on just really flat tracks, like I said, North American style tracks, this car doesn't feel like it comes alive. It always just feels like it's kind of chugging to keep up to stuff. When you go to a little bit tighter, precise courses, Japanese courses, European courses, etc., then this car really starts to come alive. And if you get to the point of doing what this car was really built for, which is going up and down really tight 2K roads, this car is just phenomenal. I actively find myself beating my lap times in WRXs with BRZs and FR-Ss or GT86s, and I feel like it's the platform that really speaks to me, the way that it handles its weight. The back end is just live enough where you can really slide the car. You don't have to worry about doing handbrake drifts or anything stupid like that. You can drift it, speed drift it, I should say, properly. It's really built and it knows what it's good at. And that is not straight line speed. That is precise cornering. And so, that's a context. That's a personal decision. There's two more big aspects that I want to talk about, which are going to be cost and how you win a race. So on the cost side, this car is phenomenally cheap. It is just amazing. It's like similar cost of living to like our Corolla, Toyota Matrix, whatever you want to call it. That's just a very basic daily driver car. Oil filters, fuel filters, bigger parts, light replacements. Like, this car isn't needed much, but just doing the research, everything is very affordable and within range of a normal daily driver that you might be considering from Hyundai, Toyota, Honda, or anybody else, which is absolutely amazing. And the timing of this video, you know, a lot of places in America are getting pretty lit around, is there a gas crisis? There is a gas crisis. Is there a gas crisis? Etc. And that, again, puts this car into pretty good standing. Where I am actively getting, well, I'm averaging right now about 6.7 liters per 100 kilometers. And on an 80 road, just cruising, I can get it down to closer to like 5 liters per 100 kilometers, which is pretty impressive. Friend with a Mustang GT is double that to triple that a lot of the time. And so that's all fuel. That's going to be the cost. When you decide to bring this car to the cottage or bring this car to just a show and shine event that's maybe an hour or two drive away, you're going to be paying for it. And to me, the benefit of having all that power, which I personally am not going to use in any context, you know, is not worth it. So I like the cheap costs on this car. The other side of it is, of course, that we don't have that much power, so we're not going to go through parts. We're not blowing parts out of this car. We're not wearing stuff too bad. This is a 2016 car, so it has all the fixes from the factory. It's gone through. It's had all the warranty and repairs and recalls and stuff done to it. It's very healthy, very happy. I got it with 1,800 kilometers, so it was just broken in, but it's had zero issues. It uses common motor oil. It does use premium fuel. It does require premium fuel. And in fact, I actually find this car struggles a little bit with 91 octane, like Shell V-Power Nitro Plus. The manual recommends 93 or 94. Luckily around here, 93 and 94 are actually generally cheaper than 91 V-Power Nitro Plus specifically. If you go to something like Mobile Esso, 91 will be cheaper than 93, of course. But 93 and 94 definitely make this car a lot happier, which is a cost. Right now, the difference is about $1.30 for just like your basic 88, 87 octane fuel, and we're closer to $1.60 on V-Power Nitro. Everything else, like, this car is the cheapest thing I can imagine. I've always loved the Honda community just because of how cheap it was to own and modify a Honda. This car is right there, but it's rear-wheel drive. The joke that this car is just a rear-wheel drive Civic really offends people and puts people off of this car a lot of the time, but growing up around muscle cars and lowriders and trucks, and I really grew to appreciate Hondas. It's just a really nice, easy experience, and this car is all of that. It even has variable valve timing, the D4S system from Toyota, but it's a boxer, which makes it very unique. One of the last real parts for me, and I'm probably missing some stuff, I'm glad to revisit this video, and I don't expect to get a lot of, you know, likes, comments, or subscriptions from this video, but it's something I always think about. I want to have a reference video, so when I'm arguing with my friends, I can point them to this video. But the final piece of it is, if you're like me, you probably grew up with a lot of virtual driving. I went from just like a PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, then I went full PC, and got more into online racing, so iRacing, Assetto Corsa, Forza, etc. And then I ended up getting a PS4 again just for Gran Turismo because that's how much I like it. There becomes a point when you're just growing up through the game. You initially try to get the most powerful car you can and just be the most potent person on the track, have the best car on the track. But as you get through and you're winning races easier and easier and easier, and you get that skill level up, it always came back to one challenge to me: to keep yourself engaged. I grew up as an only child in Northern Ontario, so I had a lot of free time to sit and just play video games. And the challenge for me was, when you beat all the AIs and you beat the people online, then you come back in and you try to set bigger challenges for yourself. And one of those was to get a lower power car or a heavier car or a harder to drive car, and just to keep trying to beat those same benchmarks or goals. But that ended up really showing me what I liked in a car. And I found myself falling in love with the A86 Corolla, especially when playing Gran Turismo. It was just amazing. There was nothing that compared to it. It actively would enter races way above its class and keep up with only basic kind of changes. So to me, you know, I meet a lot of people that talk about, well, they gotta win a race, or they want to have their car to be really competitive. And there's two ways to think about it. You can build a car that's better than everybody else's car, and that just takes some time and money, and to make sure that you know how to control it and at least not wipe it out. But the other side of that is to just learn a specific car inside and out. You really want to make sure that that car speaks to you, that you can predict exactly what it's going to do in an unpredictable or predictable situation. And there's a lot of times, especially once I've done some racing with clubs and things online, that I've realized a lot of folks don't really train themselves to that level. And those are the times when, you know, people fall in love with Initial D because of that ability to just know the car, predict where it's going to go, and always be giving it your absolute best, no matter what the conditions are. If rain comes up, or there's an ongoing or an oncoming traffic coming at you, or something goes wrong with the car, or the other guy starts to try to intimidate you, you're not thrown off by it because you at least know what to expect out of your car. And so, you know, it's hard to talk about, and there's times where it's just not possible, and you're not going to be able to beat a car with triple your power if it's in a similar weight range and the driver has some experience. And all things considered, the exact same driver going car to car is really the only way to tell what's going to be faster. But if you really want to challenge yourself, then you should really open your mind to the idea of having a lower power car and trying to hit the same lap times with that car. If you can do it in your high power Skyline, Supra, whatever you have, challenge yourself. Can you try to approach those lap times in a slower car? Of course, you can't do it in any car. You can't just buy a really cheap, slow, low power car. You need to have a car that will have something to give you back. And so a car like an FR-S or a BRZ was a massive appeal for me in that sense. The balance, the power per liter, the modification ability, and just the low cost that can make you afford to modify it, or to, you know, have a separate car that's going to be your dedicated track, show, or whatever you're into car. And so that's just my opinion. Lots of people will disagree, and of course you need more power. A lot of people feel that this car is sluggish, but my biggest advice there is to maybe tune your car before you supercharge it, because these cars have a lot more potential than people give them credit for. And this Subaru motor is actually quite good for what it is. 2 liters, 200 horsepower, naturally aspirated, Toyota port and direct injection system, which is amazing to me. Hey, so I just want to summarize some of my points here and really wrap up what I'm trying to say. And so thank you if you've got to this point in the video. But I really do appreciate low power cars. I think they get underrated, and there's a bad rap for a car that doesn't have enough power. I think you really need to figure out how much power you really want and what the trade-off is going to be, whether it's going to be more expensive to get a more powerful car, if you're going to have to buy an older car or an older model to get more power, or if it's just going to kill your fuel economy, go through parts quicker, and be more expensive to modify. We all have a different preference in how we drive and how we want our power to be delivered. At the end of the day, I'm a big fan of naturally aspirated, just linear power, you know, good crack spreads, awesome responsive motors. I'll take any day. I think naturally aspiration, whether you're going to be going high power or low power, has an amazing place in the world. The new Mustang GT 5 liters have an amazing motor in them that's naturally aspirated and high power, and it's high revving, and it's pretty cheap to own. That's an awesome case to me. But of course, the price difference between a GT 5 liter Mustang and a new or lightly used FR-S BRZ or 86 is pretty significant, as was the difference between a Subaru WRX or a WRX STI. Oftentimes seeing a difference of up to $10,000, and you could turbo this car for $10,000. You could turbo this car with the best parts in the world and rebuild the motor for $10,000. And at that point, you get to decide what your power really looks like. Very last point is, you know, power has a place. There are certain times and certain environments, especially on these long straight roads and tracks with long straightaways, where power is pretty unavoidable. If you don't have as much power, people are going to pull away from you, and however good your car is through corners, however skilled you are, you might not be able to keep up. In those situations, then power is going to be your friend. But in those situations and any other time, I encourage you to seek the challenge of having a lower power car, whether it's turbo, whether it's naturally aspirated, 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 5-cylinder, or 3-cylinder. You know, seek that challenge. When you win a race with a car that's significantly less powerful, significantly cheaper than your opponent, you feel pretty good, whether it's online or in a video game. And I think that, to me, has a lot more power than being able to say that I have the fastest car in the track. I'll never believe I have the fastest car in the track, because there'll always be someone that shows up in a secret car that looks borderline stock, and they pull that hood off, and all of a sudden you realize you're going against a 1,000 horsepower Civic or Supra or whatever's been built to those levels. And so to be able to just say, I'm going to learn, I'm going to let this car teach me, whether it's an A86, a GT86, a Honda Civic, a Toyota Corolla, whatever it is, to me there's a lot of value in that. And so I would encourage you to at least consider a lower power car. Just look at Miatas, go on Miata forums. Everybody's having so much fun because they truly are fun cars. When you win a race in a Miata, or you pass a Mustang or an Evo in a Miata, that might be one of the best days of your life. When you beat a Miata in your Evo or your WRX, that's just going to be the way of life. So thank you for watching. This is definitely all opinionated, and this is just my personal narrow-minded opinion on cars. Of course, I am planning to have a higher power car just for shits and giggles and see how it goes, which we'll post about more as we get more followers and more reason to show off more of my projects here on YouTube. So thank you very much. I hope everybody's happy and healthy. Thank you for watching Find My Wings. This is Jesse.